Hello, dear friends. I hope you are keeping well and welcome to What Works X. My name is Nada Salha and I'm part of the KHDA team. I'm joined by my colleagues Magnus and Maya, and today we'll be facilitating today's wellbeing webinar. So welcome again. And just before we start, and as we're waiting for others to join us, I'd like to invite you to log on to the Menti platform and enter the code 6095360. Menti is a great way for those that have joined these sessions before. You know, we like to use this platform quite a lot in order to engage with our audience. So if you don't mind, please log on to menti.com and enter the code 6095360. And you will see there on the screen the question, who is with us today? I'd love to know who is with us today. Are you a principal or are you part of the senior leadership team at your school? Are you a wellbeing champion or hold a wellbeing position at your school? Are you part of the teaching team at your school, whether you're a teacher or an assistant teacher? Or do you not fall into any of those three categories and you've come along because you're so interested in wellbeing? Great, thank you so much. So we've got about, I think, around 50 or 60 people joining us today, and it'll be fantastic to know who's on the call with us today in order to help our presenter understand who's in the audience and how we can contextualize the content of today's session. Wow, we've got a lot of wellbeing champions. That's fantastic. So a lot of you may know me. You've worked with KHDA over the last few years, perhaps, in terms of administrating the Dubai Student Wellbeing Census. So thank you very much for your efforts, and we're so pleased to have so many of you on the call today. Great, we've got a few principals or people holding senior leadership positions at a school. It's always fantastic to see the head of the school really interested in wellbeing and prioritising it amongst their school community. Wow, that's awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. So a lot of wellbeing champions on the call today. I really think you're going to take a lot out of this session, and I think a lot of you have seen Mark present in the past. So just before we start, I want to say thank you so much to all of you, to our teaching community, teachers out there, principals, and everyone else that's really doing a great job with the current situation. So, as you know, a movement known as What Works began and would come to change the culture of education in Dubai. It was a series of events anchored in a strength-based approach and was focused on wellbeing. And What Works X is the same concept, just the platform has changed. And with the support of technology, probably even allows for more people and more teachers to engage and share what's working at their school. So now I'm really pleased to welcome Mark Samway, Head of Positive Education at Dubai College. Mark is one of those passionate educators with well-being at heart. So I'll pass now on to Mark, and he'll also be engaging with you during today's webinar with Menti. So just keep Menti open there in the background, whether it's on your mobile phone or on a separate screen. So we'll come back to that. And Mark's presentation will then be followed by a Q&A discussion. And his presentation will also be quite engaging, as well as he shares a lot of practical interventions as we go. So over to you, Mark, and thank you very much for sharing and for being so generous with your time today. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Nada. Really appreciate it, and thank you everybody for joining today. I really do appreciate your time. I know Sunday it's an opportunity to get ready for the rest of the week, so thank you for giving me your time today. I'm just waiting to try and upload my presentation, so bear with me. Hopefully this is coming through now, so we can all see this. Perfect, excellent. So yeah, my name's Mark. I'm one of the heads of positive education at Dubai College. We have two. So although our roles are kind of split between year 7 and 10 and 11 and 13, we kind of just combine together. The other head of positive education is a maths teacher, but my dual role within the school is as school counsellor as well. So yeah, wellbeing is really at the heart of what I do within the school. I'd really love to hear from some of you afterwards if you'd like to get in touch or ask me any questions that you don't get to air today. So my email's there, and a Twitter handle is also there if you'd like to interact via that. It'd be great to connect with as many of you as possible. So I'm going to give you an overview of our PPI, or Positive Psychology Intervention Programme, that we run at DC, which started last year. So really, I wanted to start with the quote, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but I think as we're sort of moving further forward and well-being is becoming ever more important, and particularly during the current situation, I think it's all at the forefront of our minds that we're seeing that we really do need a collective approach to both mental health and well-being. So mental health statistics have been on the rise for some time now and are really quite alarming. That all starts with well-being. So if we can create a culture of well-being, and I think that is the most important thing. It can't be an add-on. It can't be something that we just do, once in a while and tick that box. We really must commit to it as a school, and it really must run through the heart of everything that we do. We can integrate well-being into our maths lessons, into our French lessons, into our DT lessons or drama, whatever it is, as well as being able to teach it. There's both opportunities for implicit and explicit learning, and it really is about creating that culture, because otherwise it just sadly won't work, and that's what all the research says. But it does take time as well. So I think it's really important to give ourselves that time to create something, be patient with it, and adapt as we need to. So I'll give you a little bit of a background of how we started at Dubai College. I've been at the school nearly 4 years now. So as I say, I started as a school counsellor. We didn't really have a counselling service when I joined the school, and it quickly became quite busy. I sat down with the headmaster, and we recognised that we needed a preventative strategy. We were just firefighting all the time. Students were getting to almost crisis point when we were intervening, and we felt that we could do something a lot earlier, and we could prevent a lot of the issues that our students were having. And of course, not all students face mental health issues. It doesn't always go that far, but we can also create a system of flourishing within the school as well. And that really was our aim. So it was within about sort of 6 months of me joining the school that we decided to go down this path. And to give you a bit of a timeline of it, is in October 2017, we spoke with 5 different companies. We looked all around the world because we wanted to see what was going to be the best fit for us at DC. There's so many different providers out there. It really is about finding what is going to work for your unique set of circumstances. In the April or the following year, we met with Geelong. So I think we kind of coincided with KHDA's big sort of push towards well-being and all the work that they've so kindly done for us over the years. It's really been an amazing help, and obviously they've done a lot of work with Geelong as well, and brought some speakers over, which has been really helpful. So they were the provider that we decided to collaborate with as well. And they came into DC when I think they were here to speak at a KHDA event, so it was really helpful. So without them, they wouldn't have been with us, and they really were instrumental in getting this started and part of our journey. So the following August, we decided to do a 2-day inset, and we did not only what is kind of positive psychology and what is well-being, but also about sort of implementing it into lessons. And we did a whole day, and Justin did a whole day with our staff about what that looks like and how they can incorporate it into their everyday teaching. We then, Where did that go? So within the sorry about that bit of a technical hitch. Within the Geelong training, they gave us this worksheet, and this is something that's really helpful, and I'm sure they're very happy to share it with you as well. It's a roadmap to implementing and sustaining positive education. So there are their domains of learn, live, teach and embed, and that's the Geelong models I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And within there are 5 different points for both starting and the introduction part, then the consolidating, and then the sustaining. So when we met with Geelong a few years ago, they scored themselves at 74 out of 100. So you can, mark each of these different sections to show where you are as a school. And when I went through it, I think we scored 9, and I haven't actually done it since, but it'd be quite interesting to do it now. Hopefully we've moved on a little bit, but considering Geelong had been delivering positive education for a decade at that point, and they were only at 74, it kind of shows how long it takes to really get this going. And as I said, patience is really important. So I know that's a little bit small. So I have managed to kind of focus in a little bit, because for some of you, you may be starting out your journey. So we'll be learning about sort of what is positive psychology, what is positive education. And so this is the very first part of it. And it really is kind of what I was explaining, is that we were exploring the possibility of a school-wide program. We looked at various different providers to see what was going to work for us, look at the different frameworks, professional learning for the staff. That is absolutely crucial. You really must focus on that staff element first and upskill the staff before you even implement anything to do with the students, because they need to understand it first. So they must learn it and live it before we can teach it and embed it. And it's definitely something to consider if you are at the start of the journey, is focusing on your staff and upskilling them, but also focusing on their well-being as well. It's also vitally important to focus on the parent and the wider community, to let them know why you're doing it, and also have some various resources as well. And then we start to live it. Once we've learned a little bit about it, we must incorporate it within our own lives as well. Students are bright, they're very clever, and if we are starting to teach something without learning it and living it first, they pick up on that hypocrisy, and they understand that what we're talking about we don't really believe in and we're not really invested in, and then they kind of think, well, why should I do it? If you're not doing it and you're not believing in it, then why should I? So it's important that we incorporate it into our everyday lives as well. So some personal practices, and then, as we say, look to start bringing it into your teaching practices. And staff well-being is absolutely crucial. Again, if we focus too much on the students too early, they potentially feel left out. And it is about creating that whole school culture of well-being. It is vitally important. And particularly now, I think, staff well-being, it's such a fundamentally crucial time to look after our staff. What teachers are going through right now is incredibly difficult. They're really struggling. And I think, you're all doing a tremendous job. So I really take my hat off to each and every one of you. It makes me quite relieved that I'm a counsellor and only have to deal with one person, not try to deal with certain people online, certain people in the classroom. So I think you're doing a tremendous job, and I really hope you're managing to look after yourselves as well. But I would really recommend kind of reaching out to Geelong and asking them for the roadmap. I'm sure they'd be, have no qualms in sharing it with you. It really is a useful resource, and you might be able to take it off my slide as well. So after we met with Geelong, we spent the academic year focusing on staff. Now, when we say we want to focus on well-being, I felt quite overwhelmed. And so again, we went back to David and to Justin and said, well, where do we start? What do we do? And their advice, and I think it was absolutely spot on, was to focus on relationships. So the R within PERMA, and for me, it's the most important pillar actually of PERMA, is focusing on those relationships. If we can get those relationships working a bit better and us communicating a bit more efficiently, I think you will do wonders for staff well-being just by focusing on that, because we get that sense of psychological safety. I can talk about these things that are going on. I know that I can get support. I know that I can say that I'm really struggling with various different things and that I won't be judged. And so I would definitely focus on the relationships part, asking questions sort of similar to what would it be like if our relationships improved by 5%, 10%? What would it look like? What would we need to do in order to achieve that? Because it has to be a group effort. If you've got one person just purely pulling along the wellbeing program within the school, it makes it it might not be sustainable, because what happens, sadly, if something happens to that person, or it has to be that whole collective approach. So we don't want to make our wellbeing program vulnerable. So if we create that culture, it makes it everlasting, and will just continue beyond to by the time that we finish school. I think when I spoke with the headmaster, our aim was to create something that will run way beyond the time that we are in school, and that can't be run by one person. And that's why I keep saying that this culture is really important. So during that academic year, we wanted to research some of the options personalised for us. So Geelong have a peak curriculum, which is absolutely amazing. I don't know if any of you have seen it, or some of you might be utilising it, but it is fantastic. It is so teacher friendly, very easy to use. And all your resources are there, and it is brilliant, and there's a number of other providers as well, but we wanted to create something bespoke for DC, bespoke for our needs, and I'll talk a little bit later about how we came to sort of assess what our needs were. But we came across Dr. Louise Lambert, again, who some of you may have seen. She's based here in Dubai. And she's helped us develop our PPI program and to lead the research on it. Again, she's absolutely brilliant. I would highly recommend reaching out to her if you are looking for some support locally. I definitely would start with Louise. So during term 2 and 3, we developed our program, and then in September last year we started teaching it. Like many of you, I'm sure, we struggle with time on the timetable. There are many things that are sort of compulsory and mandated, and by the time you've got through that and all the sporting activities, extracurricular and everything else, it's difficult to find time. So all the time that we could find for that first year was a 25-minute tutor time slot once a week. So that was sacrosanct for positive psychology and positive education. But we could only find the time for years 9 to 13. So our years 7 and 8 do a slightly different program, but the years 9 to 13, they engage within the positive psychology interventions once a week. And now it's turned into our year 9 program, because we found it worked best for that year group. So as I mentioned, I'll talk to you a little bit how we came about to sort of personalize our program. So it was based on a couple of things. It was based on some of the positive education days which we have in the school. So 3 times a year, students are taken off timetable for the whole day, and we just focus on well-being, and they do various different things. There's a big overlap with moral education as well, so sometimes we utilize the time to do some moral education activities. But it really is a fun day. Staff get to relax. All the sessions are kind of written, and they can deliver them, and it's a really great experience. But one of the sessions that I ran on that was from a guy called Ashanti Branch, who's in the US, and he has a Million Masks movement. He's got, I think it's the Ever Forward Club. And so he speaks about the masks that we wear on the outside, versus kind of our authentic self. So as we know, sometimes in school, if we're teaching, it's very difficult to kind of, sometimes we're sad, sometimes we're anxious, but when you're stood in a classroom full of kids, perhaps it isn't the time to show your authentic self. So we have to put on a mask. But what he also talks about is our ability to take that mask off and to have very real conversations. And so what I did with our year 9 students, so there's about 160 students within year 9, is we did a mask session. So I asked them to write on the outside how they would present to the world, and on the right hand side, on the inside, is how they were genuinely feeling. And this is an actual example from one of the students. So as you can see, this, on the outside, they would present as patient, happy-ish, optimistic, a leader, content and outgoing. But on the inside and their authentic side was a completely different story. They were panicky, they were anxious, they were worried, they felt untalented. It really is quite sort of, you can really see the confusion and the manic sort of feelings that are going on inside. It's a really busy diagram. And it's quite scary. When I got the results from doing this, it did surprise me, and I'll just share them with you now. So I created a word cloud from the outside masks, and so the bigger the font, the more that it was reported. So as you can see, happy was the most widely reported kind of feeling, and then there was funny, sort of bubbly, confident, nice, excited, friendly. You get the gist. And then when we look on the inside, we get a totally different story. They're feeling excluded, awkward, anxious, conscious, angry, stressed, insecure, jealous, worthless. And so when we look at this, we thought we really have to create a program or do something to improve that emotional literacy. We have to do something to allow our students and to give them the platform whereby they can talk about these things, and they can create that sort of self-regulation in order to try and combat some of these feelings. And on there as well is lonely. And I don't know if you'd seen some of the research about there, and part of the upside of our recent lockdown is there's been some really fantastic research that's been happening. And this article by Lydia Denworth looked at loneliness, and it's something that I talk a lot about with our students here at DC and some of our staff as well, that they've really struggled with during lockdown. And this study did some neural imaging, and they found that the brain scans were from loneliness were akin to thirst and hunger. So if we think about sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and those basic needs right at the bottom, we can put social connection right down at the bottom as a basic need that we have. And feeling lonely has a really big impact on our ability to thrive and to flourish. But it kind of goes unnoticed sometimes. And so it's really important that, again, we create that environment at work where we are able to connect, we are able to feel safe, and we are able to get the support that we need for both staff and students. So some of our sort of creating the positive psychology interventions was based on that kind of anecdotal data, and some of it was based on the Dubai Schools Wellbeing Census. So it's a great piece of data. I know you're all familiar with it, but there were two domains on there for us that we found a little bit surprising and that we felt that we needed to target. So the first one, as you can see, is connectedness to adults at school. Now, we felt at Dubai College that we create a really friendly environment. I think being expats and most of us away from our families, that you get a family away from home, and we felt like we really did try and create that within the school. But we were surprised that sort of 15% of our students reported having a low connectedness to adults in school, and so we really wanted to try and do something about it. As you can see, so that was the 2017 data. The 2018 was relatively similar, but then in the 2019 data, when we started teaching the program, the two most important things is, yes, it raised the green, but for me, it reduced the red. And that's what we're really trying to do when we're planning any intervention, is we want to see a reduction within that low sort of scale. So we're really pleased that it's had that impact on our students. The other domain was emotion regulation. So again, this is our 2017 data, sorry, and almost 20% of our students reported having low emotion regulation. This is a fundamental skill. It doesn't just change when we become an adult, and I think that many of us would identified that we struggled perhaps with our emotion regulation, but we really felt like this was a domain that we wanted to improve on for our students. So again, 2018 actually it got slightly worse, but then within 2019, when we started doing the positive psychology interventions, again an increase in the green and a reduction within the red. But what was really interesting is that obviously we have the ability to break down now the census data because we use Microsoft Power BI. So we looked at actually by year group. So as I said, only our year 9 to 13 students have it. So this was our year 12s going into year 13. So on the right hand side, you've got their 2018 data, and this is versus the 2019 data after they'd been engaging within the positive psychology interventions. So again, you can see an increase in the green and a reduction in the red. And actually you see that for every single year group. So back year 10 going into year 11, year 9 going into year 10. And these are the year groups that tend to struggle quite a lot within. We know their well-being really dips around year 8, year 9. But when you look at our year 7 going into year 8 data, so these students wouldn't have been part of the PPI program, there was no change. Now we can't say with any certainty that it's down to our program, but it is an interesting piece of data, and it is something to reflect on. That was that possibly it does have that impact on the emotion regulation. So if that's a domain for you and that your school struggles with, it might be something for you to consider as well. So we've also been talking about staff wellbeing. Now, I think this is a really tricky topic area because for some of the research shows that almost half of, or over half of UK workers are uncomfortable with their employers getting involved, but then 30% see it as their responsibility to get involved. So different people will have different opinions. Always, that's always the case. But I think as a school, you've got to kind of make it your own decision and come up with your own ethos and values, and you've got to stick to them. And if engagement in staff wellbeing is yours, then absolutely go on. And personally, I really think it's a really crucial part to making a happy and harmonious school. It's complicated though. I think creating a staff wellbeing program is very, very difficult. As I said, we looked all around the world for different student ones, and there are a lot of different options out there. And then you look for a staff wellbeing one, and there really aren't that many pre-existing programs out there. And when you read some of the research out there, and this is quite a good book, Rex Miller's written a few books actually about sort of relationships and people and culture. So there's some really fantastic some books, and I definitely recommend reading them. But he says that 95% of wellbeing programs fail, and I think that's mainly because they are an add-on. And as I was kind of saying earlier, that you really need to have a collective group effort, because if it's all down to 1 or 2 people, it will lose momentum, and things happen and life happens and people move on, and then it gets forgotten about. So that steady stream of culture through the middle of the school will help it be in those 5%. I don't think we're, hand on my heart, I don't think we've got our staff wellbeing at the right point at this stage. We're definitely working on it. We're definitely trying to improve it. I think it's fallen a little bit behind the student one, so we're definitely looking to learn more about it. And certainly, if you've had some success, I'd really love to hear about it, because it is really challenging. But I think the most important thing within wellbeing as well is that we all work together. And when I say at the beginning, I put my email on there and I put the Twitter handle, I really do want to connect with you, and I am happy to share any of the wellbeing interventions and strategies that we have. We're willing to share our program. We're not looking for any kind of reimbursement for that or anything else. It has to be a collective effort. And we really want to share our wellbeing practices, and we also want to learn from you. The last thing we need is wellbeing becoming competitive. So, as I say at the beginning, please do reach out. And if there is anything here that you think, I'd like to know more about that, then do reach out. So we did research our program to measure its effectiveness, and we had two strands to it. So the first strand was obviously measuring the students and measuring their well-being, but we also wanted to look whether there was a secondary impact on our teachers. And this isn't something that's had too much research done before. So what we found from our teachers that offered the positive education program, it improved their relationships with students. It started different conversations with them that they found really helpful. Just having those pastoral conversations, it was a natural way in to have those conversations that sometimes we can find a little bit tricky. They had to model the interventions themselves, and they actually really enjoyed it. So I was having a conversation with a member of staff only 2 weeks ago that has been really struggling adjusting to sort of this blended learning and finding, it very, very stressful. And we are looking here at DC as to, where can we cut back and where can we make life that little bit easier for teachers. And when I sort of was having that conversation, I said, look, would it be helpful to maybe pull back on some of the positive education stuff that we're doing? And they were like, absolutely not. I'm having to model these interventions, and actually I'm finding it really helpful for my own well-being. For that 25 minutes a week that we're delivering it, I'm having these conversations, I'm thinking about my own well-being, I'm giving advice to others when actually I'm connecting to my students because I'm feeling the same way. And so I'm giving them advice sometimes, but it's also advice for me. And so they have found that really, really helpful. There's obviously the benefit of CPD. I think, we all know that we need to be doing that all the time. But if we can do it as a collective and do it as a whole group of staff, it can really improve the atmosphere and the environment. They have ultimately enjoyed teaching the program, which is fantastic. And they believe in its ability to help the students. That has really come across quite clear. Even some of the skeptics that are seeing the improvements and seeing what it can do, and so it's been absolutely fantastic. So we did write a short report on this. So if any of you are interested, you can access this via the Middle East Journal of Positive Psychology, and you can read our kind of full findings and everything else on there. But yeah, overall the teachers found it a very kind of positive experience. So this is our positive education program, and what I'd like to do now is I'd like to run through with you 3 of our interventions, and I'd like you to sort of engage within some of them, so you don't have to listen to me for the whole time. So here's week 1. So we did this, we're in week 6, so yeah, five weeks ago or so. It was a very, very simple introduction to the POSED program, and students had to complete 2 examples for this sentence, and you can do 2 if you'd like to. But I am happier when, because. So for me, for my 2 examples were, I'm happier when I'm with my family, because it is I think it's a core value of mine, and they are really important. But I think this whole lockdown experience and not being able to travel has been, has really kind of shown us the importance of family as well. But equally, that's not necessarily within my power either. To travel at this point is very, very difficult. So I wanted to think about something that is within my power. So I'm also happier when I'm drinking tea. And what I've found is throughout this experience is that as we've got further on, my cup has also got bigger. So bigger cups of tea makes me a happier person, because I'm happier when I'm drinking tea, because I really love the caffeine and I definitely need it. So I'm going to ask Nada now to upload Menti, and I'd really like to see some of your answers to this, of when you're happier and because, and think about how often you engage with them, and can we engage in them more?
Just wanting to remind people to log on back onto Menti if you've been logged out. The code is 6095360. And Mark, we've got around 80 people with us on the call now.
Amazing.
So we hope to see a few responses up on the screen shortly.
Yeah, well, thank you all for joining us. Amazing.
We've got our first one, Mark.
Perfect. Absolutely. Nice. That's definitely some husband points there. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. With the students as well. Exercise, absolutely. Yeah. With you on the music as well, for sure. Workout, yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Oh, I'm definitely with you on the sleep as well. That's what all our data shows as well, which we'll go on to a little bit later. So fundamentally important, that sleep. Connecting with friends, yeah. Oh, definitely family. Yeah. Awesome. Oh, these are really awesome, guys. I'm really enjoying reading them, and it's so, yeah, it makes me feel really happy to read them. I think we can share so much from it as well. Okay. Should we move on to the second exercise, Nada?
Yeah, sure, Mark.
Right. Let me share it again. Okay, fantastic. Again, thank you so much for sharing all of those, and just wanted to encourage you to think about how often you're doing them, and can you increase the amount that you're doing it as well. So important to that sleep, exercise, catching up with friends, all really important things that we can do to help improve our well-being. So thank you again. So moving on to something maybe a little bit more personal, and we do this in week 8, so it tends to be towards the end of term 1, and again we do this with staff and students, and it's the worry bin. So what do we worry about within your life? So pre-COVID, we would have done this with our students, and we would have done it with post-it notes, and what we'd ask them to do is to stick their worries on the wall and then have other students come along and give them some advice. And we did the same with the staff. So what I just spend sort of a couple of minutes doing is just for you to share some of your worries maybe you've experienced over the past 6 months or so, or anything sort of generic, And then I will share our staff experience as well and see if how much overlap that we've got, because what we want to do in doing something like a worry bin is to show that collective concern that we have. We all struggle with similar things. It can create that sense of community, it can bring us together and also encourage us to get support from one another and also get a fresh perspective as well. Sometimes we get so stuck within our own worry that we can't see any kind of way out, and just by talking about it we may get some fresh perspective as well. So Nada, if you could do another Menti, that would be fantastic, and let's share some of our worries.
Yep, you can see a few coming in now, Mark.
Okay, I'm stuck on my screen. Hold on, let me see if I can. There we go. Wow. Health, yeah. Job security. Yeah. Absolutely. And there's a lot of worries, and you know, I think we can all share and read these things and connect with how it's worrying us as well. It's a really difficult time at the moment, and perhaps more important than ever that we reach out and make sure that we are getting the help and support that we need from wherever that may be. So again, thank you so much for sharing these, and I'm conscious of time, so I'm just gonna I'll share with you quickly our staff ones. Let me just share it with you now. So hopefully you can, right. So from when we did this with our staff here at DC, I worry about being able to give work and my family enough time. I'm worried I don't spend enough quality time in the moment with my children. I'm worried that I will not stand up for myself. I worry that I spend my whole life never being loved. I worry that whether I'm a good enough mother. I worry about something happening to my family whilst I'm away. I worry about that I fall seriously ill before I can save enough money for retirement. And I worry about my mental health. Now, this was done pre-COVID, I have to admit, and I'm sure if we did it now, we'd see some very similar things to what we saw from you guys as well. But again, we all share these same worries, and what the idea of this is to, as I said, to get that fresh perspective, to get that community feel, and to really make sure that we can support people when they need it most. And it was a really powerful experience as well. And it really did bring us all together. I'm going to quickly go through the teacher wellbeing index. So this has come out of the UK, and as we've been saying quite a few times now, that creating of culture will go a long way into helping this. And when we look at the statistics around teacher wellbeing, they are again quite frightening, similar to sort of the mental health statistics for adolescents. Now, globally, half of teachers will leave the profession within the first 5 years. That's currently where it's at the moment, which is an alarming statistic, given the demand for teachers all around the world, that so many of them are struggling to stay within the profession. And I imagine it's not because, you know, of a lack of love or a lack of enthusiasm, but it is their well-being that is really taking a hit. So you can see by some of these numbers that it is a very challenging profession. And when I spoke about emotion regulation with our students earlier, I would encourage you to think about your own emotion regulation. What do you do? And we've touched obviously on some of those in exercise 1, but making sure that you have a toolkit within your armory to help you manage times during stress. And if you haven't got one, then what can you do about that, and how can you improve that sort of armory? The last POSED activity I'm going to ask you to do, and I'm going to trust you to do it. There's no mentee, and I'm just going to give you a minute to do it. And we write a gratitude letter. So fresh into the new term, just after the winter break, we ask students to write a gratitude letter. And so we think about who's always been there for you, who's always made you smile and believed in you, who's made a positive impact on your work life or day. And have you told them it's appreciated? Why not? And if not, let's do it now. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to take out your phone and text somebody or WhatsApp them or whatever it is that you want to do, meme them, and just let them know now that you really, really appreciate them and that you're grateful for them and everything that they do for you. Because at times like this, we need gratitude more than ever. And if we can create that smile on somebody's face today, that'll be a lovely, lovely thing to do. So I'm going to do it as well, and I'm going to give you a minute to send that message, and let's see. And be really interesting to A, notice how you're feeling whilst writing the message, and B, hopefully you get a response, and how has it made the other person feel and you feel getting that response. So right, let's write some messages. Right. So I've just written one to my wife there, and I've said that I'm hosting the talk, as you know, and part of it is I'm doing a gratitude exercise. I'm just very grateful to have you in my life. I love you very much, and I'm very grateful for all that you do for me and for our son as well. You're such an amazing person. So that's my message. She'll probably think, what the hell is going on, and will question me about it. But I felt really good writing that, reminiscing on our relationship, and hopefully she feels happy when reading it, and we can create a little bit of happiness from this talk today. So thank you very much to all those that took part in it, and I hope you enjoyed that experience. So as I mentioned, we researched our positive education program, and we've just finished the paper on it, and this is it here. This is part of the abstract. It is currently in submission for publication, so we can't quite share it yet, but hopefully we'll do soon. But I can, of course, share the results with you, the most important part. So we took 3 measurement points, firstly in September, then again in January, and then again in June. So obviously in January it was pre our lockdown, and June was at the end of that term 3 and that kind of 16-week or so term that we did. So we were really lucky in the fact that we got that COVID data, and it was really, really interesting to see. So actually, I think one of the greatest findings for us was that school kindness changed significantly in lockdown. So we had 5 scales. We had the mental toughness scale, the mental health continuum, life satisfaction scale, PANAS, which is positive and negative effect scale, and school kindness. Now, between data point 1 and 2, so September and January, school kindness didn't change really at all. Very, very little change, and it certainly wasn't statistically significant. But between point 2 and 3, so pre-lockdown and lockdown, school kindness went through the roof. And what we found is that because we had that greater focus on well-being, and actually I don't think this had anything to do with the programme, hand on my heart, I'd love to say it did, but I really don't think it did. I think in times of need, our community came together, which was really important. We had that focus on well-being, we were talking about it more, and we were actually asking, are you okay, and genuinely meaning it. And I think we can learn an awful lot from that, and from that sort of period of time of what can we bring from the lockdown period back into our regular school. And that school kindness and that actually caring and that well-being aspect is definitely something I'd like to bring back with us, and I hope we're continuing now. From the programme, we measured students' daily activity. So within the lockdown period, we looked at physical activity, sleep and social media. Now, obviously, they weren't commuting to school every day, so it saved quite a lot of time. They were able to wake up later. And so sleep was really, really important. And so those that reported sleeping more were 3 times more likely to agree with the statement, "My life is going well," 3 times more likely to report more positive effect, and nearly 4.5 times more likely to report greater hedonic and emotional well-being. Sleep is fundamentally important. From the KHDA data, from the 105,000 students, I think it was in the top 3 correlates to well-being. Was the top 2. I think it was sleep and eating breakfast. Basic things that we can do. Have a breakfast club in school and educate our students on the importance of sleep. And I know it's difficult, and different cultures have different ways, but sleep is really, really important for our sense of well-being. And we actually didn't find any, although screen time went up and social media time went up, it didn't have an adverse effect on their well-being and mental health, which was equally an interesting finding. I'm conscious of time and your time, so I'm going to leave a couple of minutes there for any questions. Again, that's my email, that's my Twitter handle. If you would like to get in touch and talk about any of that, and I know I've gone through that last bit a bit quickly, but if there's anything that you want to ask me or to reach out about, please do. I'd love to hear from as many of you as possible. And Nada, if there's any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them as best I can. But I really do appreciate your time. I know it's our most valuable commodity, and thank you very much for spending Sunday afternoon with me. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was just fantastic. Thanks for sharing your journey all the way from 2017. KHDA has also been on its own wellbeing journey, and you're right, it does take time, it does take concerted effort. So thank you again, Mark. I am wary of the time, but I would love to get to a few questions. I'm just going to share a few questions that were received during the registration process. The first one is about keeping a positive outlook in mind. How can students effectively, address staff well-being and anxiety? And can you share any well-being practices for staff?
Yeah, it's, as I say, it's something that I'm not sure that we've got 100% right. And actually, it was speaking to our friends at Jebel Ali. I think they're doing some really fantastic work with their staff, and we utilised sort of a method that they've used. And I think they have different sort of well-being groups amongst their staff. So, kind of assessing what the needs are. So, going into lockdown, and again, as I say, this came from Jebel Ali. This wasn't our idea at all, so full kudos to them. But we kind of looked at sort of different areas. So we had a team sort of devoted sort of like socials. We had a team sort of devoted to like financial matters and trying to educate our staff around that, because that's a huge worry for lots of us. What else did we have? Thinking about sort of the environment, as in the environment in the school, and how could we change that to make it more well-being friendly. And so we had these different groups of staff that all volunteered, and they all led on that different area. So it was overseen by myself and Sheridan, the other head of positive education, and then we had those different task force leading on those different areas to try and improve that domain of well-being for staff. But it's just letting them know that they're cared of and they're thought about. And doing things, obviously we can't really do the socials and things that we might have done before, but simple things that we can try and do on a regular basis. Something we did last week was with the charity committee, and you could buy a rose for a member of staff, or you could buy a bag of sweets for a member of staff, and it all went through our Dubai College Foundation, and you could write a little note on it as well to say I'm thinking of you, or thanks for this, or whatever. And it was amazing. It created such a wonderful environment. So just little things like that you can do. It's just keeping it ticking over, and keep doing lots of little things as often as you can, I think.
Great, thank you so much, Mark. A few more questions coming through. One is around, again, in relation to staff wellbeing. You spoke a lot about the importance of learning about wellbeing, living it, and in order to be able to teach it. One teacher or one of our members has said from the audience, wanting to be positive is great, but it's also impossible all the time, especially during these times. Do you have any tips or techniques on how do I motivate myself better?
Yeah, I think that's one of the great sort of misleading statements of it. We're calling it positive education. It isn't about being, you can still take, you know, great comfort or reassurance from difficult times, and there's always something to be learned from. But I think during these times, we've got to reassess what our goals are and what we're able to achieve. It's not going to be perfect, and it's probably not going to be up to the standard that you're used to. So I think you've really got to set yourself some realistic expectations to start with, and to reassess what the goals are, and whether that's as an individual, as a department, or as a school. You know, I know certain schools are, you know, we just focus on teaching, we're just going to do that, we're going to strip everything back, and this is what we're going to do. But in terms of keeping yourself motivated, I think by having those realistic goals, that will help with the motivation, because there's nothing worse than not achieving goals, because that's the biggest demotivator of them all. So having those more realistic sort of targets for ourselves, keeping ourselves going, reaching out to others, getting the support that we need, and just reassuring yourself you're doing the best job. I mean, none of us had even heard of this, you know, a year ago, thankfully, and hopefully in a year's time we can look back on it and think, my God, thank God it's over. But you're doing a tremendous job, you really, really are, and you're doing your best, and it's always enough. But make sure that you're setting yourself those realistic targets for sure.
Absolutely, Mark, and I second that. Every journey is different, and it is unique to that context of your school. I loved how you looked at the Dubai Student Wellbeing Census data, and I'm very happy you incorporated it into this presentation. We have one person asking around how do you draw strengths from the results of the Wellbeing Census results in everyday planning, or in planning in general?
Well, you've got to use your strengths as well. You know, if we look at the various other sort of the character strengths interventions, in times of difficulty, we use our strengths. So you can look through your wellbeing census and look at the domains that your students flourish on or do better at, and rely on them. You know, if you've got a great, you know, connectedness to adults, then utilize those connections. Whatever it is, we can absolutely utilize those strengths. But I think that it's a rich set of data. It's quite a lot to sort of like chew through and get through, and yeah, it's just looking how you can best utilize that data, and maybe how the strength can improve you know, some of your sort of more areas for development, I guess. But it's tough, and you know, it's only once a year that wellbeing census, and I'm sure if you took it on a couple of different days, you might get different results. So again, you don't be too hard on yourself on it. You can get some different feedback as well, and do lots of other little interventions, and utilize the student feedback and their voice. They'll generally tell you, you know, whether something's kind of working or not, and they're usually best placed to let us know what we need to work on as well. But it's tough. It is really hard, and I think also giving yourself permission to get things wrong and to make mistakes. We've made so many along the way, for sure, and still continue to do so, but it's part of it, and we'll learn from each and every one, hopefully.
Great, thank you so much, Mark. And I guess this is an opportunity to plug the Dubai Student Wellbeing Census, which will be being implemented 1st of November for our 4th year. And last year we had around 105,000 students. So looking forward to seeing the engagement this year and the results when they come out. So I know we've got lots of wellbeing champions on the call today, and I think they're quite excited about the 4th year as well. So thank you for that, Mark. I can't see any more questions coming through. Just let me have another quick look. Yep, nothing coming through, and I can see that Magnus has put your email in the chat, so you might be flooded with a few emails this evening, Mark. But yes, that's fantastic, and thank you very much for being so generous with your time and with your information and knowledge, and really thank you to Dubai College for, you know, I mean, what you said before, well-being is not competitive. It is it's a collective, and we all need to support each other. To look at well-being and to you know, provide students and teachers and everyone in the education community with higher well-being and opportunity for that. So thank you again, Mark. Okay, I would love if you have 5 more minutes, ladies and gentlemen in our audience, to just go back to Menti, and we've just got some feedback questions there for you. Just 2 questions. The first one is, overall, how satisfied were you with the quality of the content of the webinar, the structure of the webinar, and the presenter and his preparedness in responding to questions? So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to respond to those questions. So the code again is 1695360. So this is the first time you see Menti, Mark, so I hope you've liked it.
I have. This makes me anxious, though.
Really nice way. Yeah. Well, I'm going to take this off.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, be generous.
So
no, it's fantastic.
2 more minutes just to give that feedback. Feedback's quite important for What Works X, because we're always looking at ways to improve.
Absolutely.
And bring to our schools information and presenters that are just as fantastic as you are, Mark.
Thank you. I hope so.
I've also noticed a couple of people asking for the Geelong template. You can either email Mark for it, and Mark might be able to send it out to you, or we can check in with our friends at Geelong and get it out to you as well. I think we've shared it before in previous wellbeing webinars that we've had with our wellbeing champions. So, and I think Geelong's quite generous in sharing that template as well. Okay, thank you everyone for your feedback. And now we'll just move on to the next question. What did you enjoy most about the webinar today? So what key takeaways would you like to take away from today's webinar, sorry. So one person has said it was very knowledgeable. For me, I've seen you do the 100,000 masks exercise before, and I've always loved that one. I think that was really insightful, especially when you're doing it with young students.
Mm. Yeah, it was quite eye-opening.
So you can see there, Mark, the feedback that's come through for your webinar today. The emphasis on staff wellbeing being fundamental in a school. Feel free to jump in, Mark, as well, if you want to respond to any of these.
Yeah. Imperative. Yeah. We need more details about the program. Yeah, as I say, I'm very happy to share anything about the program, and I'm sorry it was perhaps a bit vague, but yeah, yeah, if you get in touch, I'll share any sort of information or anything else that you'd like to know about it. I'm very happy to.
The presenter was empathic and practical.
Oh, thank you very much. I am full of empathy for our community at the moment. It's tough. Yeah. It's really tough for all of us. I think, I genuinely think we're doing an outstanding job, and take my hat off to each and every one of you. Students are so grateful to be back in school, and that is not an easy task and takes a lot of work. So well done to each and every one of you for making that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a parent, I'm seeing my kids come back from school happy and grateful for their teachers, for their friends. School is more than just a school. And that's been absolutely, clear following the lockdown period and being away from teachers and students for almost 6 months.
Mm.
So I know my kids are extremely grateful for being back at school, and so am I. And I can see as well somewhere there that someone said about the where was it? The problem wall, I think it was. What did you call it, Mark?
The worry bin. And
the worry bin, sorry.
Yeah, doing post-its. Yeah, it was brilliant. It was really good for our students. Came around sort of mock time, and yeah, they were able to talk about that and to give each other hints and tips. It was fantastic, and again, powerful with the staff. Yes. We all share a lot of those same worries and concerns, but often don't talk about it. Yeah. So you can do it anonymously as well, the fears and concerns, which sometimes helps. But equally managing it as well, making sure that they're supported.
Yeah, and then providing that sort of community feedback as well. And I could just picture it in a classroom. Everyone's got a sticky note, and it's going up on the classroom wall. Obviously, these days you cannot do that. So you could use things like Padlet. I'm sure that you can use Menti as well, and all of this can be done anonymously. But it would really bring to light a lot of the issues and worries that students have.
That's it.
So that they're not alone.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. I mean, the engagement has been fantastic. It really has, and we're really grateful for all that you do and for engaging and sharing your feedback. Thank you so much. And just before we go, just to remind you that a recording of this session can be found at inthisttogether.dubai.khda.gov.ae. Just feel free to go onto that website, and you'll find a recording of Mark's presentation there. I think maybe by tomorrow it will be uploaded. And there's also a lot of resources there that are provided freely to our education community to help them through these times as well. Our next session actually will be we've got wellbeing workshops coming up for our wellbeing champions on the 26th and 27th of this month. So that will be coming up. And then we have some IPEN, International Positive Education Network webinars as well that are being provided for free to an international audience. And I'll just try and bring that one up as well so that you can have a look and perhaps log on to. Just let me have a look. Sorry, I might just need to give you the web address. So if you go to ipen-network.com/conference-2020, the International Positive Education Network is providing a virtual conference in wellbeing in education on the 28th and 29th for our particular time zone. So please do go to that website, and let me just try bringing that up once again. Sorry. Here we go. Okay, so for the Middle East time zone, it will be on the 28th and 29th. The conference features keynotes by Anthony Selden, Marty Seligman, who is they say the father of positive psychology, Angela Duckworth, Professor Lee Waters. These are fantastic speakers. Dr. Abdullah from KHDA will also be presenting a keynote as well. So this is another great resource over the coming weeks for you to register and be part of as well. So that brings us to the conclusion of today's webinar. Thank you very much, everybody. I wish you all well, and again, thank you for all that you do. And from my home to yours, it's goodbye, stay safe, be well. Thank you again, Mark. It's been fantastic having you. And thank you to everyone that's been on the call today. Goodbye, everyone.